Go on, take a card, any card you like, go on. Put it in the pack, right, put it in the pack. Hocus pocus. Ace of spades. No, something going wrong there. Ace of spades. No, that's the ace of spades. What the heck am I doing? I'm not here talking about card tricks. I'm talking to Atanas, who is a brilliant cameraman, post-production editor, and the works. Anything to do with the media, he's your man. And he is just about 19. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to the film school, which is set in the centre of Ealing Studios. It's nothing to do with Ealing Studios, but it's set there. And lots of people do courses now in this wonderful place where before the war, George Formby wowed the people in the cinemas with the films. And then they made In Which We Serve with Noel Coward and all the wonderful actors in that. And they made the Lavender Hill Mob after the war, and The Man in the White Suit, all those Alec Guinness films, tremendous films. And now it's all silent. It's all gone. Jobs change. But there's people like Atanas who is going to learn his craft. He's on the other end of the camera. So don't worry about this. What he's going to do now, for his first project, for Metro Films, he's going to tell you all about me, because I'm just a jack of all trades in life. But I've spent probably all my life, and I'm in my 81st year, in pantomime with Maudie Edwards at 4 years old, and right on from there to variety, and then I did military service, and then I became a journalist, and I was an army officer and a media man, and then when I decided to leave all that when I was in my 40s, I went back to acting, and that's what I've done since, and I've made loads of movies, and you can do it too. People say, oh, that's too much, or I haven't got the confidence. You don't need confidence, you just convince yourself you're as good as anybody else. We're all human beings, but we're all made by the same fella. And if you want to do something, it doesn't matter whether you want to be a brain surgeon, or you want to be a lawyer, or you want to be a filmmaker, or a midwife, or a nurse, or whatever, and you want to do it hard enough, you'll do it. Shall I sit down?
Yes.
Great. He's going to alter the focus now. I've always felt it necessary from being a butcher's boy when I was a young lad, as a butcher's boy, and a newspaper delivery boy, and I used to sell potato peelers door to door when I was 11. Can you imagine that? I did 11. But my mother had my dad was dead, and I had to get money to contribute to the household, because you didn't get the kind of money you get now when you're poor. And well, I learned quick, and I learned how to interact with Joe Public, and I did lots of other things that I'm going to tell you about, which helped me also to become an actor. It's something you don't learn at drama school. You don't even learn it at repertory theatre. There used to be loads of them. They were amateur reps, and they were over the cooperative wholesale societies, and people used to go and see the shows. They had one in production, one in reserve, and one in rehearsal. So you learned how to do that. And I found myself doing that and working with actors to be like Ronald Fraser. We called him Ronnie Fraser. And he made 66 feature films. And he was a brilliant actor. He went to RADA, as I did later on. And, well, it's the background of learning your craft. But you don't only learn it at a drama school. Put that out of your mind right away. How you learn to be an actor is you've got to have a real interest in people. It's really a lust for human interaction. And if you have that, you've broken the back of being an actor. The other thing, if you want to be an actor, is Stanislavski, the great Russian writer and director. He taught a method, and it was called The Method. And you probably know that in Hollywood it was absorbed. But really, some people have got it already. And I was lucky. I was one of those lucky ones. because I didn't stand in the corner putting my arms out and believing I was a tree. I just enabled myself to, was fascinated by certain characters, and I was so fascinated with them, and my range of characters are political parliamentarians like Winston Churchill, or gormless actors like George Formby, who wasn't gormless at all, because that's the secret of acting. You see somebody on the stage and they're well known and you think, I know him, he's gormless, but he's not. Because when you're an actor, you're just that. You adopt a part. Now, George Formby, who many of you out there don't know, but he played the ukulele and he sang and everybody loved him before the war, because he was the great white hope for the poor people, and we had them in abundance in England before World War II. And he made films about where he was the Gump, and he married the Deb, most unlikely, but he did. He always got the good girl in the end. But really, offstage, George Formby was a very serious man. And many people who thought they knew him, thought that they were related to him. Some people did and weren't. They entertained that fantasy because he was such a lovely man. But in actual fact, he was a very serious man. He was monosyllabic, but he had one secret. He had a woman he was married to, and she was called Beryl Formby. And she was his Svengali, if you like, because every successful man, and you can say this hand on heart, usually has an even more successful, dynamic lady behind him. She dealt with Michael Balkan at Ealing Studios when her and George were called in 1935 to make movies there, and they'd made two homegrown ones in the Regent's Park area of London, and they were mocked by the people, the big boys. But in actual fact, those two films, because George Formby was so good, and he'd had 15, 20 years of experience in variety, he had experience, and also he had a great following of people who liked him, especially from Lancashire. And everybody wanted him in pictures. Well, they went to make the picture, and it did good business. And the Ealing Scouts saw him, and they went to Basil Dean, who was the head of Ealing Studios, with Michael Balkan. You've probably heard of Jill Balkan's father, Michael Balkan. And they were the big shots at Ealing. Now, Ealing was in very bad shape at the time. It was in receivership. That was going bust, and that was going to be the end of Ealing Studios. Well, George Formby saved Ealing Studios because he made a film about motorbikes, which was his favourite hobby, and they made it in the Isle of Man. Plenty of this, ha-ha, mother, never touched me, and that was George Formby. It's kind of comedy. And it netted over $1 million, which was a lot of money in those days. And that actually saved Ealing Studios, and it went on to make people like Dickie Attenborough, who was with Noel Coward in Which We Serve in 1942, and all the other marvellous films that were made before the war at Ealing. It was only because George Formby saved the studio from bankruptcy. George had been married to Beryl from the day they eloped together when he was 20. And it was a wonderful marriage. They had 36 years together. And Beryl died when George was 56. She was 8 years older than him. And then George didn't last more than 3 months when he died in March the 6th, 1961. And I, for one, lost not a friend, but somebody who I loved like one of my own relatives. He was such a lovely man. And this is what I'm getting round to. We're going to talk about him and his father and all that in another video, a very big one. But this time I'm going to tell you the influence he had on me that turned me into, first of all, an optimistic would-be George Formby. And I played on the halls and I played on television. But like Beryl told me, George Formby's dynamic wife, you can never be another Elvis, another Maurice Chevalier, another Charlie Chaplin. You can never be, because they've already done it. So what did take me into show business And what fueled my fervour was what I saw, people like George Formby, Frank Randall, people like that. And I was crazy about it. I used to do provincial theatres. I started off as a child, the age of 4, in 1943, singing the current Bing Crosby hit of the day, Don't Fence Me In. And I was there, you know, singing a current hit of a crooner at 4 years old. And No Nerves, it was a pantomime about, babes in the wood, and I was one of the babes. Well, my mother didn't want me to go on the stage, but I did, and my dynamic drive overruled her, and I went on the stage and was in it, and until she took me out of a theatre show when I was 15 because they had nudes in it, who weren't really nude, they were wearing Lurex body stockings, but she didn't want them in, and I was taken out of it. But before then, I used to go and work for people who are in another branch of show business. Now let me tell you what that is. It's one of the oldest professions. It's selling on the market, the open market. And I did it because my dad was dying, he was paralysed after a stroke, and we had no money. And I used to work for A.B. Starr, a Jewish barker, and he worked on Ashton Market. And he used to do what's called a run-out. Now he used to have a teapot, and I used to be, if you like, his devil's apprentice. He said, we'll do the run-out now. He said, who's going to give me half a crown for the teapot? Nobody got any money. It was after the war, very austere. And a sailor in the audience, and he'd say, I'll give you half a crown. He said, get the half crown off him, son. That was my job. I'd go and get the half crown and say, what, you sir now, are you married? You married? No, you've always been round-shouldered. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going. You're an honest man and I'm an honest man. And anybody who comes down here and buys anything off A.B. Starr, they know that if I don't like it, you can bring it back and ask for your money back. And I'd like to see you get it. No, but joking apart, what's going to happen? We're going to auction the teapot, and who's going to give me half a crown? Are you going to give me half a crown, sir? The sailor, yes, I'll give it you, I'm saying. Right, now you thought you were going to buy an ordinary ceramic teapot, didn't you? But you were wrong. Because, you know, we had the Harrods pearls earlier on, with 4 guineas a box. 4 guineas a box, real cultured pearls from Harrods. Well, don't give him 1 box, give him 2 boxes of pearls. Wait a minute. And he got this pith helmet, this solar topi, that he got when he was a battery sergeant major in Burma, Rangoon during the war. He fought the Japanese. They always say things about not many Jews went. Well, he went. He fought the Japanese. A wonderful man. And he said he'd have 5 white fibres in this solar topi. So it made him stand out. You could see him for miles. And he said, right, I'll tell you what. We'll give you the culture pearls, and we're going to give you a Royal Dalton canteen of cutlery and a Royal Dalton 48-piece bone china tea service. There you are, and the guy's looking amazed, you know. And he finished, he kept giving him so many things, he couldn't carry them. And this guy staggers away. And what, of course, the people there didn't realise was that sailor was a plant in the crowd. What he did with the things he bought off A.B., it's a bit dishonest. He put in the cab of the other side, which they couldn't see, the Pantechnicon. But by the time that man came round again, and A.B. says, right, I've got another teapot. Anybody going to give half a crown for this teapot, number 2? And all the hands would go up, because they saw what the sailor got, and everybody wants something for nothing. But of course, what they got was all rubbish. I knew so many people. I wanted to do what they did. I wanted to talk to the public and make them laugh and make them happy. And I met so many wonderful stars. Bud Flanagan, Chesney Allen, underneath the arches, we'll dream our dreams away. Wonderful people. Jewish again, Paula Shue, lovely people. I met Jimmy Jewell and Ben Warris, who were on the radio. I met so many people. And I copied Frank Randall. Now, Frank Randall was a guy in Lancashire. To be funny, people usually had dentures. They had no teeth. They had all the teeth taken out so they could go to work and they wouldn't have toothache and not be able to go to work. They worked in the cotton mill for something an hour in those days. And Frank Randall, he epitomised the working man, and he used to lampoon the establishment, the officers, the managers, and he did wonderful sketches, and he owned his own film studio. Well, I ended up doing stooge for him until my mother took me out of his shows. He's a wonderful man. He died about 3 years after my father. My mother said, "You made more fuss about that man than you did about your own father." I said, "I know, I love my dad. You know, he was wonderful, but I worship Frank Randall." He used to say, "By gummy, Sam Sharp stuff as his tail. It's all legs and arms. There's no body in it, you know." I just remember sending a glass of beer away like this to be analysed. It must have got mixed up at the other end. I got a postcard back. It said, "Dear sir, your horse is in perfect condition." I can rattle my clogs a bit, I bet, you know, but it's only my bit of fun. I'm just an old fool, that's all. And if you'll take my advice, all you young uns, I'm old enough to be Morris' grandfather here. Get plenty of fresh air and ale. Look at me, 82. I can jump a 5-bar gate. Aye, if it were laid on flour, you know. Only to the day I was at a funeral, I was coming away from graveside. A chap come up to me, he said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 82. He said, "Aye." He said, "I don't think it's much use thee going home at all." Anyway, before I go, I'd like to sing a little song when I said goodbye to the missus to fight in the Boer War. It's entitled, "He Left Her Behind to Go to the Front." Did I say that? Anyway, that was Frank Randall. And I loved all those people. And they were part of my long apprenticeship. Well, movies I love from the 20s onwards. Sound movies best. I do like some silence. All Quiet on the Western Front was a magnificent film. You know, the last part of the war. And it showed the futility of war. And I have the same thing. I spent 34 years in the army as a media ops major. Not a major at the beginning, but at the end. And I gradually saw the sheer futility of people killing each other. Wilfred Owen, the world famous war poet, who was in my regiment, the Manchester Regiment, he said, you know, half the seed of Europe squandered in one fell swoop. And that was the First World War. And then we had a replication of it 20 years later. I don't like people being killed. I love life to go on. Young people, half the seed of Europe, and then half the seed of the world, India, and all the far-flung parts of empire, they all gave people. And for what? For nothing. Here we are, we're still not happy. We're still at loggerheads with each other and terrorists and God knows what. So, if you like, the legacy of war brought us terrorism. People are not happy. We should have an accord. If we don't, we're going to blow up this wonderful planet and everything in it. That's my view. Films, I love the films of the 30s, both in England and America. Now, the Americans, before they started making films, 100 years before, they ran magic lantern shows. And it was the same people. They were mainly Jewish immigrants who had no other means of earning money. And they were very industrious. And they were the backbone of the American movie industry. You talk about Mayer and people like that, you know, and then you talk about Ernst Lubitsch and Ruben Mamoulian, who produced Maurice Chevalier and Love Me Tonight. These are 1929, 1930 films with Jeanette MacDonald. These are gorgeous music, wonderful lyrics, often the dialogue in rhyming couplets. Now this was fantastic. And they took the stars of the day. A magnetic Maurice Chevalier. He had grown up in the slums of Paris, Ménilmontant, the slums of Paris, and he was with Miss Tanguette. And at 12 years old, he was in the Folies Bergère with Miss Tanguette, and he had a sexual affair at 12 years old with Miss Tanguette, which lasted for many, many years. These people were just the same as they are now, you know, and they've not changed. People like Dustin Hoffman, who despite cancer has beaten it, he's still here, he's my age, and wonderful actors like Paul Newman, modern actors. The actors I loved were in England. What they did at first, they tried to put West End plays onto film using the same proscenium shooting. In other words, the proscenium is the front of the theatre with curtains, and they played it straight like they do. You know, is the king coming tonight? Oh, yes, he is. It was like that, so it was, they call it creaky. But I love it, and I love it. And so Tom Walls and Ralph Lynn replicated the old witch farces, and they made wonderful films, Cuckoo in the Nest, several others, and they're now on video, and you see how good they are. Then they made wonderful films, as they did in America, with haunted houses and sliding panels and sinister butlers, and they were really for adults. Now my dear friend and mentor and enabler, David Yates, who put me in a lot of films, he loves children, and he's probably the best director for children. That's how he directed virtually all the Harry Potter films, give and take a few. He's a wonderful man with children because he's a wonderful understanding of children. Now, I wouldn't say I'd be a great director, certainly not as big as David Yates, but I love children. They are so lovely. My biggest regret is I'm heterosexual. People think I'm gay. I'm not. I tried too hard with women too early and loused it up. But I always wanted to be married to a wonderful girl like Ginger Rogers or somebody like that, or Jessie Matthews, who won those films, and I wanted to have children. What do I like best? Well, I love the comedies that were made in America, great comedies. I love the films with Aileen McMahon. She was a wonderful actress, and she was with Kai Yakevi and another wonderful person. And they made these morally upright films, and they made them in Middle America, Middle West America. And I love Jimmy Stewart. You know, Jimmy Stewart like that. You know, if I could lasso the moon and bring it down on this table, oh boy, would I be happy about it. But you know, there's one thing about movie land. It's all tinsel and celluloid. Don't let anybody kid you. And he was wonderful. I think the finest film he made was Harvey. I have made a whole teaching video for a company. I didn't make it. And I did it all in Jimmy Stewart's voice. And, you know, I love Jimmy Stewart. I had a dear friend in Ronnie Fraser who went to rep with me from Ashton-under-Lyne, where I'm from, in Lancashire, 9 miles from Manchester. He went to Manchester Grammar School. I didn't. I couldn't pass a scholarship. But he was 9 years older than me, and he was in 66 films, including The Sundowners, The Killing of Sister George. He was in so many films. He went to RADA, as I did, and he was a magnificent actor, The Pot Carriers. But unfortunately, he became a victim of drink. He used to drink 3 double vodkas in a Worthington glass, filled to the top with white wine and lots of ice. He talked as though, you know, he'd got a little piggy mouth. And, you know, everybody loved him. He was a great character. And that's the thing about actors. We're like gypsies. We all work together. We come together, and there's no rank on the studio floor. It's all outside. It's propaganda for promotion. I've worked with Jack Palance, Angelica Houston, who lives here in London. She lives at Eaton Square in Belgravia. And I said to her, when I was working with her, I said, I suppose you live in LA? She said, I don't. I said, where do you live? She said, I live in the best country in the world. I said, where's that? Ireland? Because she said, no, where you live, England. There's no other country like England, with the National Health Service and everything. And we owe so much to people. And one of the people, forget Horbelisha, forget Keir Hardie, forget Lloyd George, the man who really put the NHS into operation and made sure we got it, was the man with the V sign. You've got it, Winston Churchill. He not only saved us from the war, and how did he get an isolationist country who didn't want anything more to do with, an empire of King George III, who they had the War of Independence against, and why should they come and help us in the Second World War? Well, the reason that Churchill was able to persuade them and persuade Franklin Delano Roosevelt to persuade the American people to come into the war was because Churchill's mother was an American. She was called Jenny Jerome. So if you had a Jewish mother, then you're Jewish. If you have an American mother, especially one like Jenny Jerome, who was a hard-driving genius, she was a mountaineer, she did everything. She was really very popular with all the Kaisers and kings, and I do mean very, very, very popular with in Russia and with the Kaiser. And there was talk that because the father of Churchill was Lord Randolph Churchill, who died of syphilis, that he wasn't the father of Churchill. The mood on the block suggests that Churchill's father was either one of those kings, and certainly a good fighting chance would be it was Edward the Peacemaker, Edward VII, the son who waited for Queen Victoria to pass away. And she did in 1900 after the Boer War. And poor old Edward VII, who really lived it up. He was a great hunter, a great character, and he loved his native Germans, the Dukes of Teck, and he and the Kaiser palled out together. The Kaiser was an admiral in the Royal Navy. He had his own ship. So why did we have a war in 1914? I wondered about that. My mother knew Churchill. She often talked about him in anecdotes, saying what a gentleman he was, and he was a gentleman to her. No hanky-panky. But my mother was an heiress. She was a Somerset, and she had a magnificent Grace and Favour house on Hertford Court, just off Park Lane. And she met Churchill there several times, and they were friends. Nothing naughty about it. And she laughed that later on in life, when she saw me doing Churchill when I was 14, or less, 12, and I was at a secondary modern school, a Catholic secondary modern school I was at, and I was talking too much, and the teacher said, "Come out and tell us all." And the girl had been doing a discrediting impersonation that her father used to do about him, saying that the people of Britain, the working class, were the scum of the earth. And I went up and I did Churchill, "We shall fight on the beaches. Whatever happens at Dunkirk, we shall never surrender. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." And we didn't. And as he stood on the balcony of the Ministry of Health, just further along from the cenotaph, and from all the way along Pall Mall from Buckingham Palace, millions of people greeted him on VA Day, May the 8th, 1945. And they shouted to him. You can see the film now as he stands on the balcony. "This is your victory, Mr. Churchill." And he turned around and he said, "No, this is your victory. Victory for the cause of freedom is on everybody's lips. Everyone, man or woman, has done their bit. Everyone has tried, none have flinched. In all our long history, there has never been a greater day than this. God bless you all, and God save the King." And when I saw him do that, and I was only a little boy, I was 7, I worshipped him. I worshipped him because he saved us from a hellish existence. Churchill, like me, was a duffer at school. He was useless. I was. My mother used to say, always as an apologia, oh, he's a late developer. I think, fingers crossed, but I was, because I did my education later in life. And I'm talking to the children now. They're not as bad as they were at school. They used to call me a washout and a waster, and I'd never make anything of myself. And I made films all over the world. And I got into show business the straight way. It's not through the back door. You can't get into show business through the back door. You've got to go to drama school, and I went the best in the world. And I was older when I did it. And you know, the thing is, if you work hard and try to get somewhere, that's what to do. And Churchill, he did that. And with me, you know, I learned and I learned and I learned about show business. I went forward with people like David Yates as my mentor, and I'm proud to say that and honoured, because he was 30 years younger than me, a boy from Lancashire, and he was a wonderful director, and he's still a respected director. And without him, I would have never got a Latter-day Start, and I was in films recently, having been in The Sims, I've been in The Way We Live Now. These are all David Yates films. And I did in India 2 years ago, I did Viceroy's House, which is about partition in India, with Simon Callow and Michael Gambon. And last year I was in Turkey. I did Cicero and played Churchill, which is a spy film. And about 4 years before that, I was in Shanghai, China. So to say I was a late developer, and I ended up as a major in the army in media ops, and I was 60 years in journalism, and I'm still a prime seasoned writer, I haven't done so bad. And my advice again to you is, never let people call you a failure, because nobody's a failure. Everybody has a good part hidden in them, and if it's allowed to come out and encouraged, that's the way to do it. Good luck, and God bless you, and don't forget what I've said.